I found her bra in the car, and it wasn't from that morning. I suppose I should start by saying I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to just leave, to vanish. But that's what I did. I quietly walked away from my 3.5-year marriage after discovering my wife's affair. A year later, after I had built an entirely new life for myself, she tracked me down, convinced she could put the pieces back together. This is the story of how it all fell apart, and how I learned that sometimes the only way to move forward is to disappear completely. It all came to a head in February of 2018, but the cracks had been forming for a while. I had a contract gig as a director for a technical sales company. It was demanding, sure. It sent me on the road pretty often, but the upside was that when I wasn't traveling, I had the freedom to work from home, setting my own hours. My wife, Kathy, held a high-powered, very lucrative position downtown. On paper, we were the perfect couple, a real power duo. We had what I genuinely believed was an excellent marriage, even with the logistical challenges. But things had gotten strained. Her work hours were stretching longer and longer, creeping from late evenings into what felt like entire nights. My work trips, which were usually just 3 or 4 days every 5 or 6 weeks, became a point of contention for her. It was a classic case of a slow drift, two ships passing in the night, only we were living in the same apartment. Let me back up a bit. We met 5 years ago at a summer cookout hosted by a mutual friend. The connection was instantaneous. I still remember the way the late afternoon sun caught her hair as she laughed at one of my dumb jokes. She was ridiculously attractive, sharp, and articulate. I was, and still am, a bit rough around the edges. I'm more comfortable in hiking boots than dress shoes, and my demeanor has always been straightforward, maybe a little blunt. For some reason, she found that appealing. It was a classic case of opposites attract. We started talking and just didn't stop. After a few weeks of dating, we were completely smitten. The physical chemistry was off the charts. Whenever we'd get back to one of our apartments, the clothes practically flew off. It was intense, passionate, and felt incredibly real. 18 months later, we were married, moving into a large apartment while we saved up for a proper house with a yard and everything. The first 3 years were good. They were more than good. They were great. We were building a life. But then, things started to shift. It was subtle at first. I still loved her, but I found myself walking on eggshells. Little disagreements would escalate into full-blown arguments. If I brought up the late nights or the work outings that were happening multiple times a week, she'd become instantly defensive, almost irate. Her career was taking off. She was climbing the corporate ladder, and she insisted this was all just part of paying her dues. That was her go-to justification. She'd turned around on me, telling me that since I was away for weeks at a time, which was a gross exaggeration, I had no right to question her commitment. I tried to compromise, telling her I could easily cut back on my travel, that I could arrange my schedule to be home more. But the arguments were always circular, never reaching a resolution. They were designed to exhaust me into submission, to make me feel like the unreasonable one. Looking back, the signs were all there, waving like giant red flags in a hurricane. I was just too blind, or maybe too trusting, to see them. I was completely oblivious to the fact that my wife was having an affair. Aside from the dwindling intimacy and her constant late nights, I had no reason to be suspicious. She was my wife. I trusted her. Our sex life had taken a nosedive, but I chalked it up to stress. I just figured she was exhausted from her demanding job. Still, the constant rejection was a slow poison to my ego. I tried to initiate something, and she'd roll over, feigning sleep or claiming she had an early meeting. It chips away at you. She had a work phone, a separate device that she was always on, but I never saw the kind of covert texting you read about in these stories. She didn't hide her screen or jump when I walked into her room. She was smarter than that. She used our spare bedroom as her home office and would spend hours in there, door closed, tapping away on her keyboard. I just assumed it was work. Around September of 2017, the pattern solidified. Kathy would come home from the office only to immediately get ready to go back out for a work engagement. It started as 1 night a week, then 2, then it was consistently 3 or more. I'm not a naturally jealous person. I understood her work environment. She was a beautiful, successful woman working with powerful male CEOs. I knew she'd get attention, and I trusted her to handle it. She always gave off the impression that she was a consummate professional, completely focused on her job. The first real, undeniable gut punch of suspicion came about a month before everything blew up. She had stopped at the supermarket on her way home and called me to help bring in the groceries. I went out to her car, grabbing bags from the back seat. As I was pulling out a heavy one filled with canned goods, I glanced toward the front of the car. Something pink caught my eye, glinting from underneath the front passenger seat. I crouched down. It was a bra, and not just any bra. It was my wife's. I knew it instantly. She had a preference for a specific brand, a certain style from a particular high-end store. It was hers. In that single moment, 1,000 alarm bells went off in my head. Looking back, that bra was a klaxon horn, a screaming warning sign. I knew her habits. When she was feeling particularly lustful, the first thing she always did was take her bra off from under her shirt. It was this quick, slinking move she did. It was our thing. And seeing it there, crumpled under the passenger seat of her car, my stomach felt like it was filled with ice and acid. I couldn't breathe. Why would her bra be under the seat? The only scenarios my mind could conjure were ones that made me feel sick. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, my heart pounding so hard I thought I was going to pass out right there on the pavement. When I finally made it back into the kitchen with the groceries, my face must have been sheet white. Kathy took one look at me and said, "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I just mumbled something about being tired and ignored her, my mind racing, trying to piece together a puzzle I didn't want to solve. It took every ounce of my willpower to keep my emotions in check, to not let the betrayal I felt flash across my face. That night, I made a decision. I had to know. I had to find out if she was seeing someone else. The next day, my mind was a chaotic mess, replaying every recent interaction, every late night, every flimsy excuse. I started to connect the dots I'd previously ignored. But other than that damn bra, I had no concrete evidence. We live in a fairly large city, and her office is in a sprawling downtown complex. The idea of trying to catch her felt impossible, and honestly, pathetic. I decided to try a different approach first. I put the suspicion out of my mind, just for a moment, and make a real effort. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I hadn't been giving her enough attention. So, that Friday, I decided to surprise her. I left work early, went to the store, and bought all the ingredients for her favorite meal. I got a beautiful arrangement of flowers, a bottle of the expensive wine she loves, and I set the dining table like it was a five-star restaurant. Elegant plates, silverware, candles, the works. I wanted to remind us of what we had, or what I thought we had. She breezed in after work, late as usual, dropping her briefcase by the door with a sigh. I met her in the hallway, a hopeful smile on my face, and gestured toward the dining room. I pointed out the meal I'd prepared, the whole romantic setup. Her face fell. "Oh," she said, her voice flat. "I'm so sorry, honey. I totally forgot to tell you. I have to meet up with some coworkers at that place over on 5th. It's a last-minute thing." She saw the look on my face and quickly added, "I just need to hop in the shower first. Maybe I can have a small bite with you before I go." That was it. Something inside me just snapped. I went completely silent. The anger that washed over me was cold and sharp. I'd had enough. While she was in the shower, a plan, born of desperation and rage, formed in my mind. I grabbed my work cell phone, a second phone I rarely used, and quietly went out to her car. I opened the back door and tossed it onto the floor, tucking it under the seat. I knew I could use the Find My Phone feature on my personal device to track it. Then I walked back into the kitchen, and in a fit of cold fury, I scraped the entire meal I had so carefully prepared into the garbage can. I took the flowers and shoved them down in there with the food. When she came out of the bedroom, showered and dressed, she looked stunning, as always. "All right," she said with a forced brightness. "Let's eat." I just looked at her. "Never mind," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Go out with your friends." She gave me a strange look, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes. "Are you mad?" she asked. "I'm sad," I replied, the words tasting like ash. "I'm sad that you never seem to want to do anything with me anymore." That set her off. She got angry, accusing me of having a short fuse and telling me to stop acting like a child. I just thought for once, I muttered, mostly to myself, we could spend an evening together. Silly me. She just gave me this sly, dismissive smile, grabbed her purse, and stormed out the door. The moment the door clicked shut, I pulled out my phone and opened the tracking app. I watched the little dot representing my work phone, and her car, started to move. 20 minutes later, it stopped. Right at the bar she always went to with her coworkers. I had to see it for myself. I got in my car and drove there. I felt like a stalker, a paranoid husband from a bad movie, but I had to know for sure. I parked across the street where I had a clear view of the entrance and the parking lot. Her car was right there. I waited. An hour crawled by, each minute feeling like a lifetime. Then I saw her. She walked out of the bar, but she wasn't alone. She was with a man, an older guy in an expensive suit who had the distinct look of a senior executive. I watched as he took hold of her arm, pulled her close, and planted a long, deep kiss on her lips. My world stopped. My body went completely numb, and a knot of pure agony clenched in my stomach. They walked over to a different car, a sleek, black Mercedes, and got in together. When her car pulled out of the lot, I followed them, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. It was almost an out-of-body experience. I was just an observer watching my own life crumble. And you can guess where they went. 10 minutes later, they pulled into the parking lot of a hotel. I watched them get out, holding hands, and walk inside. That was all I needed to see. The foolishness of my hope, of my grand romantic gesture, crashed down on me. I started pounding the steering wheel with my fists, not making a sound, just this rhythmic, violent release of pain and rage. Something inside me went blank. I don't know if I blacked out or just dissociated, but when I came back to myself, all I wanted was a drink. My life took a turn that night I never could have imagined. I just started driving, leaving the city lights behind me. The image of them holding hands burned into my mind. I drove and drove, tears of pure anger streaming down my face. About 30 miles out of town, on a dark, two-lane highway, I saw the warm glow of a tavern. I pulled in, parked, and went inside. I sat down at the bar and ordered a whiskey neat. The bartender, a woman with kind eyes and a weary smile, looked at me and said, "Honey, you look like someone just took all the wind out of your sails." I guess I looked as bad as I felt. You could say that. I managed a half smile cracking my face. A few minutes later, a man sat down on the stool next to me. He was older, with a weathered face and calloused hands, the kind of guy who looked like he'd lived a real life. He struck up a conversation. I didn't feel like talking, but there was something about him that put me at ease. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, I was telling this complete stranger about my wife's infidelity. I told him all I wanted to do was get away, to just forget she ever existed. He listened patiently, nodding along. When I finished, he gave me a solid pat on the back. "You're not alone, buddy," he said. "Went through something similar a few years back. I think these things happen for a reason. Your life can go one of two ways now, a positive turn or a negative one. And I guarantee you at this very moment, it's entirely up to you." For some reason, his words cut through the fog of my grief. They jolted me. He was absolutely right. I've always been a pragmatic person, and even through the pain, I could see the logic in what he was saying. We introduced ourselves. His name was Ray. He was a country guy, a real salt-of-the-earth type, and I liked him immediately. "So what are you going to do?" he asked. "You going to move out?" The thought hadn't even crossed my mind in any practical sense. I was operating on pure fight or flight, and every fiber of my being was screaming flight. I knew, with absolute certainty, that I could not be around that woman any longer. Ray must have seen the desperation in my eyes. "Look," he said, leaning in, "I have an idea, and I feel for your situation. I really do. I've got a mobile trailer on my property. It's not much, needs a little work, but it's solid. If you feel the need to just go, to get out, I'll give you a terrific deal on it. You could even park it on a beautiful piece of land I own up in the foothills. You could watch over the place for me. It could be good for you to escape your predicament." Just a thought. The bartender, who had been quietly listening, chimed in. Honey, if I could have escaped my crazy ex-husband years ago, I would have jumped at the chance to live in his trailer or anything else, just to get my head on straight. I felt like I'd stumbled into the twilight zone, where kind strangers offered you escape hatches from your life. But maybe this was exactly what I needed. After a moment, I said to Ray, "Yeah, I'll think about it. Maybe I could come check it out." We exchanged numbers and agreed to meet at his place in a few days. Driving away from that tavern, I felt a tiny sliver of hope. I had perspective. I had an opportunity to escape what felt like an inescapable nightmare. And I knew one thing with crystal clarity. I would never, ever be with my wife again. Cheating was the one thing, the only thing I knew I could never forgive. It was a deal breaker, the end of the line. When I finally got home that evening, Kathy was already there, sitting on the couch. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice laced with an accusation she had no right to make. I turned to face her, the image of her kissing that man still vivid in my mind. "Where have you been?" I shot back. "You know where I was," she said dismissively. "I went for drinks." I looked her straight in the eye. "Are you having an affair?" She looked surprised, caught off guard, but she recovered quickly, her mask of indignation snapping back into place. "No," she said, her voice cold. "Why on earth would you ask me that?" I told her I'd heard a rumor, that someone at her work might have seen something. "Who told you that?" she demanded. "Someone I know," I said vaguely. She scoffed. "You're being ridiculous," she said, accusing me of being drunk and insane. "We went to a bar," I said, a bitter irony in my voice, "to enjoy some drinks with our friends." She clearly wanted to press me further, but something in my expression must have stopped her. She turned and went into our bedroom, closing the door behind her. I slept on the sofa that night, or rather, I lay there, staring at the ceiling. I had my proof. She had been lying to me, deceiving me, for months. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him. I felt disgusted, hurt, and profoundly sorry for the man I had been. But then, through the pain, I thought about Ray's trailer. The idea of it, the escape it represented, was like a light in the darkness. It cheered me up. The fight or flight response had fully kicked in, and I was all in on flight. The next few days were strange. Silent truce. We moved around each other like ghosts in our own home. I met up with Ray as planned. He lived on a beautiful ranch, and the trailer was even nicer than I'd imagined. It was about 26 feet long, fully furnished, and surprisingly cozy. It reminded me of a spring break trip I'd taken with some buddies in college. It was a vessel of freedom. I offered Ray what little I could for my savings, and he practically gave it to me. He then gave me directions to his other property, the one up in the foothills. It was gorgeous, a quiet, secluded spot with lots of trees, close to hiking and biking trails. Ray had a small cabin on a hilltop overlooking the land, and he told me there was already electricity and water hookups ready for the trailer. He promised he'd pull it up there and set it up for me whenever I was ready. Over the next few weeks, I tried to give Kathy one last chance to come clean. I confronted her again, more directly this time. All I got was more gaslighting, more denials. I even warned her. I told her point blank that if I ever found out for sure that she was cheating, there would be no coming back. There would be no discussion, no therapy, no second chances. it would just be over. That seemed to push her even deeper into her affair fog. She started lashing out, the denials becoming more frantic and, frankly, more pathetic. I almost laughed at how transparently she was lying. I kicked myself for not taking pictures of them at the hotel. I had no tangible evidence to throw in her face, only my own word, which she was determined to discredit. After weeks of this emotional torment, I decided I was done. I wanted out of the marriage. But instead of telling her, instead of having another screaming match, I just started planning. While she was at work or out on her engagements, I began to quietly move my things out of the apartment. I took my clothes, my books, my personal equipment, and I transferred it all to the trailer. It was methodical, silent, and deeply satisfying. At least I felt like I was doing something, taking back control. During this period, I did notice a slight change in Kathy. She started being a bit nicer to me, more polite. But it was too little, too late. The damage was done. The trust was shattered beyond repair. She kept going on her company outings, and I just let her. One night, as she was getting ready to leave, I got ready too. She glanced at me, a surprised look on her face. "Where are you going?" she asked. I just smiled. "Meeting up with some friends," I said, echoing her own favorite line. "You don't know them. You wouldn't enjoy all the shop talk." She started to ask more questions, but I cut her off, using the exact same dismissive tone she always used with me. "All right, have a good time," she said, a hint of offense in her voice. "Oh, I definitely will," I replied. I wasn't actually meeting anyone. I was driving up to the trailer, working on it, hanging out with Ray and his family. I started to build a new life before I had even left the old one. I cut way back on my drinking. I wasn't going to let this turn me into a cliche. It would have been so easy to drown myself in self-pity, but I knew better. Then, I got the opening I was waiting for. Kathy informed me she'd be traveling for work the following week. A team-building retreat, she called it. When I asked who was going, she mentioned the executive team and a few department heads. I knew he would be there. "I hope you have a great time with your boyfriend," I said, my voice dripping with contempt. It sparked a furious argument, but it didn't matter anymore. As Ray had told me, it doesn't matter who the other guy is, brother. The only thing that matters is that she chose to leave you. She destroyed the marriage, whether she admits it or not. Facts are facts. Ray should write a book for the betrayed. The moment she left for her trip, I put my plan into its final stage. I had the perfect opportunity to move out completely. I went through the apartment and took everything that was unequivocally mine. My laptops, my tools, my clothes. I didn't touch any of the shared furniture or goods we had bought together. Before I walked out that door for the last time, I left a note on the kitchen table. At first, I had written a long, angry letter detailing all my pain and her betrayal. But I crumpled it up. She didn't deserve that much of my energy. Instead, I took a small piece of paper and wrote just 5 words. I hope it was worth it. On top of the note, I placed my wedding ring. As I closed the door and walked away, I felt a great weight lift from my shoulders. I was free. The hurt was still there, a deep, raw wound that I knew would take time to heal, but I had taken the first step. I needed to get away from her, quickly and quietly. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't forced a confession. In my mind, she didn't deserve the dramatic confrontation. She had disregarded everything we had built. Our plans, our dreams of a house and a family, and now it was all gone. I owed her nothing. The consequences were hers to deal with alone. I drove up to my trailer in the mountains. The crisp, clean air was exactly what I needed. I started running again the next day, pushing my body to its limits, and it felt wonderful to be alive. My phone, however, was a different story. While she was away, Kathy sent a few generic texts. We just landed, having a team dinner. Then after a day or two of silence from my end, the tone shifted. "Where are you? Why haven't you gotten back to me?" When she got home to an empty apartment, my phone exploded. A relentless barrage of calls and texts. I ignored every single one. Her mother tried calling, but I didn't pick up. Her messages grew more urgent, then desperate. "What is this? We need to talk. I'm not sure what you think you know, but nothing is happening. There isn't an affair." Then, after a week of my complete and total silence, the confession I had been waiting for finally came, via text, of course. "I am sorry. Things got out of hand. I was involved with someone at work, but it didn't mean anything. You were away so much, and I was so preoccupied. I made a mistake. I was going to end it. A mistake." That one word made me detest her more than the affair itself. Mistakes don't last for 6 months, 8 months, a year. They aren't a series of deliberate choices made over and over again. Her messages then devolved into pitiful pleas for me to come back, to work on the marriage. I refused to respond. After a few more weeks of this, I changed my mobile number. My haven was not going to be destroyed by her. In June of 2018, I received an email. It was Kathy. She informed me she had hired a lawyer and was filing for divorce. I replied with 3 words. "Okay, that sounds good." This, apparently, was not the response she was expecting. It led to another flood of emails, begging me to see her, to talk. She eventually realized it was hopeless and wrote that she would stop bothering me if I agreed to an uncontested divorce. The moment I consented, I was truly free. I never had to see her again. We had no closure, but I didn't need any. For a few months, I would think of her occasionally. A song we both liked would come on the radio, and a wave of grief would wash over me. But as time went on, the thoughts became less frequent, the pain less sharp. I simply stopped thinking about her, and life got better. Much better. I was officially divorced, and things are going great. I met a wonderful woman who lived just down the hill from me. I was out for a run on the trail, and she had a flat tire on her bike. I helped her fix it, and we just clicked. She's a few years younger than me, but she's fantastic, smart, funny, and she loves my simplified way of life. She calls me her mountain man. I wasn't in a rush to commit to anything serious, but I hadn't given up on women entirely. I love living in the trailer. I love being outdoors. Simplifying my life had made everything easier, including processing the grief. I know everyone handles these situations differently. I was lucky. We were only 3.5 years in, and we didn't have kids. I acted in my own best interest. If you ever go through something similar, my only advice is to keep living your life. Focus on improving yourself. It does get better. For over a year, I had peace. I thought that chapter of my life was closed forever. I was wrong. I had run into her once before, by sheer bad luck. I was in a coffee shop in the town near my home, a place I visited regularly. I saw her walk in, and my blood ran cold. It was a 2-hour drive from our old apartment. This couldn't be a coincidence. I managed to slip out a side door before she saw me, but the encounter left me rattled. Was she actively looking for me? The answer came a few weeks later. I was at that same coffee shop, working on some paperwork, using their free Wi-Fi. I finished up, packed my laptop, and walked out to my pickup truck. "Paul!" I heard someone shout. I turned, and there she was, standing across the street, waving. My ex-wife. Armageddon had arrived. She hurried across the street, a huge, hopeful smile on her face. She walked right up to me, as if she was anticipating a hug. I instinctively held out my arms, palms up, stopping her in her tracks. The smile vanished from her face, replaced by a look of deep pain. "I've been searching for you, Paul," she said, her voice trembling. "I heard you had moved out this way, and I just wanted to see you. Can we please talk?" I felt like a cornered animal. Every instinct was telling me to get in my truck and drive away, but I didn't. "All right." I finally relented. "We can talk for a minute." She asked if we could go to my house, and I gave her a firm, immediate no. We ended up on a park bench down the street. She started by telling me how good I looked, how much I had changed. She liked the beard I'd grown, my level of fitness. I was wearing a tank top, and she went on and on about how much my body had changed. She was laying it on thick, wearing small white shorts and her hair in a ponytail, just the way I used to like it. My radar was on high alert. This was a calculated charm offensive. "What do you want, Kathy?" I asked, cutting her off. She finally dropped the act and said she was sorry about the affair. She told me that after I left, karma had hit her hard. When her employer found out about the affair, which had become an open secret, the situation at work became untenable, and she eventually had to resign. Her affair partner, who had been engaged at the time, was officially reprimanded and transferred to a different department. After he blamed her for everything, she retaliated by telling his fiancée the whole truth, which led to them breaking up. As she told me this, she bowed her head and started to weep. I just sat there, silent, watching the people walk by. I felt nothing. No pity, no satisfaction, just emptiness. "I never meant for it to happen," she said, looking up at me, her eyes red. She claimed the corporate politics and the allure of power had drawn her in, that her AP had used his influence to corrupt her. But she also admitted that she was using him just as much as he was using her. She swore she was going to come clean the night I accused her, that she hated herself and was drinking after work to numb the guilt. She said that the moment she realized I was gone for good, her heart had burst with loss. She ended the relationship with her AP immediately and became obsessed with finding me, convinced there was a chance for reconciliation. She wanted a fresh start. With me. I just stared at her. Then, the anger I had buried for over a year came boiling to the surface. "You have no right," I said, my voice low and shaking, "to come out here and try to undo the damage you caused. Do you honestly think I can just forget everything you did? You destroyed our marriage, Kathy. I told you, I warned you, if you cheated, we were done. There is no forgiveness for this. We are not restarting this relationship. You murdered it." My voice was getting louder, and people were starting to look. "I watched you." I hissed. "I followed you that night. I saw you kiss him. I saw you walk into that hotel with him. Did you know that?" She grabbed my arm and just broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. I let her cry on my shoulder for a moment before pushing her away. "I deserve this," she wept. "I know I do. But please, Paul, just let me take you to dinner. I want to be transparent about everything. I love you so much. I didn't realize how much I loved you until you were gone. You broke me just as much as I broke you." She started to hyperventilate. I helped her up and gave her an awkward hug, mostly just to calm her down. In that moment, I knew I had shattered her heart as completely as she had shattered mine. We walked for a bit, and when she had calmed down, I asked her how she found me. She told me she had run into an old mutual friend of ours, Stacy, a few weeks prior. Stacy had been reluctant to give up any information, but Kathy had persisted, wearing her down until Stacy finally admitted I was living somewhere nearby. So Kathy had started driving out here on her days off, just hoping to run into me. We ended up having dinner. I made sure we didn't drink. We talked for a couple of hours. It was civil. When I walked her to her car, she started pleading again. She swore she hadn't dated anyone since I left, that I was the only person she wanted. She begged me to give her another chance. No, I told her. It's still way too early for me to even consider going down that road. I gave her my new email address, but refused to give her my phone number. You'll just blow it up with texts and calls, I said. As she was about to get in her car, I asked her one last question. If I had been the one cheating, would you have forgiven me? She paused to think. Yes, she finally said. In time, but only if we went to counseling, worked through it, maybe even had a binding agreement. I just looked at her. All right, I said. Maybe I could do that. In 5 or 10 years. She grabbed my hands, looked me dead in the eye, and said, I would wait, Paul. God damn it. I will always love you, and I will do anything to prove it. Her words shook me. But as I drove home, back to my peaceful life, I knew I couldn't go back. I couldn't unsee what I had seen. I couldn't unknow what I knew. That brings us to the present. This will be my final update. For anyone who thought I would be the typical fool who takes back a cheater, you're going to be disappointed. Last week, she sent me a long, rambling email professing her love and regret and asking if she could come stay with me for the weekend. My answer was simple. I shut her down completely. I told her that I had no plans to reconcile. I am happy living alone, enjoying my solitude, and keeping my life simple. I'm 32 years old, and I'm in no rush to change anything. In my email, I made it crystal clear. I don't know you or trust you anymore. You made your bed. I wish you the best, and maybe, far in the future, we can be friends. But not now, and probably not ever as more. Her response was very telling. She was annoyed by my evasiveness. She admitted that she had taken a job offer in a different state. Her real plan had been for me to move with her. She thought that since my work was remote, it would be an easy transition, a way for us to start over somewhere new. She was running out of time before her move and wanted to see me in person to try one last time to persuade me. Luckily for me, her time was up. I had a week of business travel scheduled, and by the time I get back, she'll be gone. I'm grateful that she will no longer be in my life. She'll eventually realize that her time with me is over for good. She'll find someone else, and maybe she'll even cheat on them. To anyone reading this, my advice remains the same. Make the most of your life, let go of the past, and empower yourself to move on. Good luck to all of you.